good morning to all. It's a pleasure for me to be able to have this important space to address the issues and questions that many of you may have about the situation here in Colombia. Let me first say, send my regards to Ambassador Santos, to Vice President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Daniel Rund. And I was listening to the introduction made and what Ambassador Santos just said. So I would start by one of the parts that I listened when you were beginning your introduction, was that Colombia is a democratic state, that Colombia has solid institutions, and let me that be the first part of this entire presentation. Colombia is a country under the rule of law. We have a long-standing democratic tradition that has been upheld by all the Colombian governments. We have not been a country with a history of dictatorships. We had one in our history, but this has been a country in the region that has been always recognized for being a solid democracy and having solid institutions. So that would be the first part. I heard also that this started on 28th of April with what was called a national strike. And this national strike with protests was in somehow related to the tax reform. And that is partly true. There was the tax reform that the government intended to introduce as a result of the effects of the pandemic. We had no intention of doing any piece of legislation that had a new tax reform. But what the government of Colombia, led by President Duque, was confronting was the excess of expenditure that the country had to do in order to confront COVID-19. We had to almost duplicate the amount of internal care units in matter of months. We also had to invest in what we have called ingreso solidario. This is a monetary transference as a welfare check that we gave to 3,600,000 people in Colombia in order for those who were the people that were more affected by the COVID pandemic, which lost their job, were getting poorer by the minute. And this was a way for us to limit the effect of the pandemic. And at the same time, we had a lot of different social programs who were directed to the most vulnerable people in Colombia, including a subsidy for formal employment for small businesses and also large businesses. And at the same time, we had to make extraordinary payments for the other social programs as Familias en Acción, which is also a program that is directed as a welfare check for the most vulnerable families in Colombia. Jóvenes en Acción, which is a program directed for the youth, the more vulnerable youth, and at the same time, all the programs directed to children that were also enforced during this period of time. This made that we had to have an impact in our economy, in our deficit, in our debt, and in order to pay and to continue having all these programs, including gratuity in education for the most vulnerable people, we had to make some adjustments, and this helped to for this national strike to have a more reception in more of in the society. But just to be clear, the strike was already in place 4 months before we had the tax reform, and is the continuation of what happened in the 21 of November when we had also a national strike. And the first part that I want to be very clear, Colombia, and the president has made it clear, I have made it clear, the Minister of Defense has made it clear, the entire government is absolutely clear that we not only respect, but we protect peaceful protest. And the manifestation of the people as a democratic expression is protected under law, and is the responsibility of our armed forces and our national police to guarantee that exercise. But we have to separate peaceful protest, peaceful manifestations from riots, violent riots, and a lot of delinquent activities that we have had in the country. And this is very important for you to have and understand, because in the US you have lived a peaceful protest and the difference when there's a violent riot that has different activities that put in danger the rest of the society. So let's just say that in the entire country, there have been more than 5,000 activities with peaceful protests, and over 700 municipalities in Colombia have participated in those peaceful protests, and there has been no riots, no disturbance, no interventions by the police, no use of our anti-riot police, which is El SMAT, which has no lethal weapons or weapons of reduced lethality. And that's the first part. And that shows that in Colombia, people can demonstrate, people can protest without having any interference by our police. On the other hand, we have had around 67 to 17 municipalities where there have been hard riots, systematic vandalism, violence, where there has been robberies, and this has, without doubt, had to have the reaction under the rule of law, under the procedures, under international protocols, and always protecting human rights of our national police. So let's have another statistic which is very important. From the 28th of April to today, we have had more than 1,200 peaceful protests, and only we have had in the entire country, with more than 5,000 activities, we have had around 700 interventions of our anti-riot police, which have been directed to stop a riot or to stop a violent expression. But as a result of that, I had another statistic is we have had today by our Attorney General's office, and I want to make this very important. Colombia is a country of institutions, but it's not, our system is not as the US system. Our Attorney General is a completely independent institution from the national government and the executive branch. Our Attorney General is elected by the Supreme Court of Justice. And the Attorney General of Colombia is the only institution that can certify if someone has been assassinated, if someone has been killed, what were the reasons, where was the place, and who is the responsible or the presumption of responsibility. And then a judge has to declare that responsibility.